I'm Insomniac, and this is the Invicta Aviator model 17204. First, I'd like to thank Victor for sending this in to be reviewed. If you have any cool watches you'd like to see reviewed on the channel, email me at shouldItimethis@gmail.com. I will review the watches, send them back. Okay, on to the Aviator. The case of the 17204 is actually a rather interesting design. It's made to look as though the outer part of the case and lugs are more or less a setting for the watch itself, which in terms of design looks as though it's its own separate piece completely that just slips right into the outer case like a holder. The outer portion of the case is polished on the sides and brushed on the tops of the lugs. The quality of both of those finishes on the outer portion of this case really aren't fantastic though. The case back is a brushed stainless and has various information about the watch on it, and it has what would be a really cool kind of machined look with the screwed down styling, but either this watch has 2 screws and 4 holes, or 4 screws have fallen out in the time that he's owned this watch, so either way, it just doesn't exactly work. Onto the center portion of the case, and we have a nicer finishing and a more quality looking aesthetic. The exposed sections of the sides of the case have a nice dark gray brushed finish to them, with Invicta decently engraved on the one side, and the bezel has a decent dark chrome style finish and a cool grippy texture pattern that goes around the entire bezel and looks good with the watch as a whole. The crown and pushers are huge, but so is the case height, which is my least favorite part about this case. The crown and pushers are finished to match the bezel, and they're done pretty well. The only issue is that with a crown that large, you expect to have the brand logo engraved or embossed on it at least. Otherwise, it's just way too plain. I have very mixed feelings about the dial on this watch. The overall base of the dial is a beautifully finished, high-gloss, slightly brushed backdrop with proper aviator-style emphasis on the minutes, with a triangular index at 12 and printed indices at 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and 50 minutes. The other positions are taken up by various dials. The ones at 12 and 6 for the chronograph, both using a cool aviator instrument gauge style border, and both with a cool concentric circular pattern for the base of the dials. The one at 12 is a 5th-second dial for the chronograph with great legibility, and the one at 6 is a 2nd sub-dial for the chronograph, also with great legibility for the printed numerals, and a cool crosshair pattern on the sub-dial itself, but no indices between the 5-second indices for precise measurement of the seconds. The gauge-style dial at 9 o'clock shows the minutes for the chronograph, and although I love the fact that the dial itself rotates and the red arrow is stationary, again, there are no indices between the 5-minute indices to show you an accurate read of the minutes. There's a date window at the 3 o'clock position in the wide date window format, which usually I don't like, but in terms of symmetry with the other features on this dial, it looks great, and the red square in the center helps you easily pinpoint today's date. The hands on this watch are excellent. You have semi-skeletonized sword-style minute and hour hands with a polished finish and a bit of lume filling towards the ends. The running second hand is an orange stick-style hand with a clean look and a good length. And the hands for the 5th, 2nd, and 2nd sub-dials are sharp, crisp, and have perfect contrast and a white finish against the black backgrounds. But there's an execution problem with this dial. Many of you might have already noticed that there's a wonderfully legible set of printed indices at the outer edge of the dial for the tachymeter. But not unlike with many other cheap quartz chronographs, this watch doesn't function like a proper chronograph for the large central second hand is the chrono second hand. So how on earth would you use the outer scale? Sadly, it's just there for decoration, so does it look the part? Definitely. But with the large centralized second hand being the running second hand, you'd never fool anybody into thinking that that scale is there for anything other than decoration. With all that said though, the design execution of this dial is very well done. The red highlights for the compass, starting indices for the chronograph, and date window border are just enough without being overdone, and for the most part I find the look of this dial to be aesthetically pleasing. As I stated earlier, there is a date complication and a chronograph on this watch. date window is easy to read and looks fairly good. The chronograph looks good and functions reliably when activated, but it's almost useless. Now to start on a positive note, I'm impressed that there's a 5th second measurement on this watch at all, so that's pretty cool. But as also stated earlier, the seconds are measured in the subdial at 6 o'clock, which has no indices for the seconds between every 5 seconds, and the minute counter at 9 o'clock has no indices for the minutes between every 5 minutes, and the tachymeter scale is useless, being that the main second hand on this watch isn't for the chronograph. So despite the fact that almost nobody actually uses their chronograph, and those who do normally don't buy an Invicta for precise timing, I'm not a fan of a complication that takes up that much dial and isn't totally usable. The lume on this watch is Tritonite Night Glow. The printed 10, 20, 40, and 50 markers are all done in lume. The ends of the minute and hour hands have lume filling. The triangular 12 o'clock marker is done with lume. The hands for the 5th second and second chronograph subdials are covered in lume, and the second hand is completely luminescent. The lume inside the hour and minute hands are pretty solid and long lasting, but the 10, 20, 40, 50 prints, the triangle at 12, and the hands for the chronograph don't glow very bright even on a full charge, and as you're probably seeing here, they fade away quickly. Now this isn't a dive watch, but in standard light to dark situations like walking out of your house into the yard for example, the lume is practically non-existent. The dial on the 17204 is busy, and the hour and minute hands on this watch, although aesthetically pleasing, are the same color as the dial, so instant legibility due to good contrast is minimal. But due to the lume filling at the ends of those hands, and clearly printed minute markers at the outer edge of the dial, the time is fairly easy to read to a good degree of accuracy. Accuracy with this piece should be a perfect score, being that it's a solid Japanese quartz movement. And in terms of keeping time accurately, I haven't noticed any deviation from the correct time in the couple weeks that I've had this watch. And the running second hand does line up with just about every minute marker on this dial, which gives the movement a solid quality look. Where it loses points with me is the chronograph. You'll notice that when in use, the 5th second hand has a stutter on both the right and left sides of the sweep. And when I stop the chronograph and reset it, you'll notice that the second hand for the chronograph never resets all the way back to 0, but instead sits around 1 second. And given the lack of indices between the 5 second markers on the second subdial, it's hard to really tell just how accurate this chronograph is when in use. The bracelet on this watch surprised me. It's wide and large, which is expected for a piece of this size, and it's thick, which helps counter the weight of the watch itself. But given the size and the thickness of this bracelet, I honestly didn't expect it to be comfortable. Yet with some days of wrist time, I often found times where I forgot I was wearing it, which is a good indicator of overall balance and comfort. I also found the clasp to be sturdy and hold perfectly. No snags, no accidental openings. It does the job well and looks good aesthetically with this watch. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you all know the story with Invicta watches. They all have a really funny MSRP listed on the website. I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it's laughable when you think about the fact that this watch is on there for $995. But as with all Invicta watches, the MSRP isn't even close to the selling price, and as of the time of this review, I saw this watch on Amazon for $86. Now obviously this section, as always, is very subjective because whether or not this watch is worth $86 to you starts with if you really like this watch aesthetically. And in this particular case, whether or not you like a watch this big. And I'm not going to subtract value points in this particular case for the sloppy chronograph because let's be serious, almost none of us use our chronographs. They're just extra stagnant hands for us to look at when we check the time. And before some of you start slinging some hate down in the comments, I said almost none of us. I know some people do use their chronographs. I even occasionally use the chronograph on one of my watches to time arbitrary crap, like letting the car warm up for a whole minute before I put it in reverse. Stuff like that, but you know what I'm saying. So if you like this style of watch and you like a large, kind of chunky statement piece, this is actually a solidly built, cool looking piece that's surprisingly comfortable to wear and keeps time accurately. So do I think it's an exceptional value at $86? No. But do I think it's a pretty good buy if you're looking for a boldly styled aviator chronograph? Yes. Again, big shout out to Victor for sending this in to review. Very cool, much appreciated. If you're enjoying these watch reviews, hit the thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the notification button so you know when new ones come up. And if you'd like to see more watch reviews on this channel, and more often, sign up at the link at the top of the video description, support the channel on Patreon. This way I have more resources and more time to bring you cool, kick-ass new watch reviews and all that good stuff. Okay, see you next time.